child. Cars have gotten so expensive to the point that whenever somebody asks me to help them buy a car, I be like,
get somebody else to do it.
but I think I may have an alternative solution for you. What's up, everybody? Welcome to The Breakdown, where we talk about everything cars, news, and reviews. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. Today's episode, I will be helping the cheapskate motherfucker that doesn't want to spend more than $2 on a pack of popcorn at the movie theater.
That's what you just paid a man, please.
This episode is about five different cars that you can buy in the event you're on a tight budget. And this is not the typical Honda Accord, Toyota Camry, even though there is technically a Honda Accord, and we'll get into it in the video. But this is some cool, cute little cars. Not really cool, they kind of like bland, if you ask me. But they're fun to drive, they're fuel efficient, and they'll get you from point A to point B with borderline no problem. So let's get into it. So stick around and stay tuned because you're on the breakdown. That was good, wasn't it? Y'all like that? Y'all like that? I ate, didn't I? Before I get started,
what he got going on, this video has been brought to you by FICO, your #1 source for credit information. If you're tired of salesmen playing in your face at the dealership, and you're tired of Credit Karma selling you lies, then you don't want to miss this. FICO is the #1 credit source that 90% of automotive lenders use and can save you thousands of dollars in the car buying process. Click on the link in the description below to get 20% off your next purchase or to get subscriptions for $40 a month with terms and conditions applying. Stop wasting your time and the dealers and get that Hellcat that you deserve. Get your FICO score today. And now back to Dum Dum Show.
I have been working on my book, which, by the way, buy my damn book. I'll get to the details later. Buy my book. It's going to teach you everything you need to know about how to buy cars and the proper way to not just buy them, but also how to create equity that can help propel you towards your goals of generational wealth. So stick around and stay tuned for that. But for all of my subscribers, viewers, likers, whomever, hell, even my haters, and y'all mean something too.
I don't really have haters. I've been working on that though.
Because if you ain't got haters, if you ain't got haters, you ain't doing something right. Okay. Thank you so much to everybody who has been a part of this journey. It means a ton to me. I'm having so much fun. Anyway, let's get into the 5 different cars that you should consider if you're on a tight budget. These cars are going to be under $5,000, and that is before taxes and fees. Y'all know how I feel about that. If you're buying cash, this shouldn't be that big of a deal. But these are 5 cars that will give you everything you need in a car and then some. So let's get into it. Number one, the Honda Accord. I'm kidding, it's not a Honda Accord, but it is one. It's the Acura TSX. When the Acura TSX first came out, it was seen as one of the cooler cars in Honda's lineup. It wasn't quite the TL, and it wasn't quite the Integra, and it was right there in between, but it gave you the K24, which was seen as one of Honda's most reliable and legendary engines, and it could go for 200 to 300,000 miles easy. There's one person on YouTube who actually got about 500,000 plus miles, and this was a couple of years ago. Hopefully that car is still on the road. But these cars are amazing, they're cheap, they're fun, and you can get a good one for at least $5,000. Now, as far as reliability concerns, the Acura TSX is one of those engines that is going to keep going and going and going, as always, as long as you take care of it. The expected problems you can run with the Acura TSX is the AC compressor replacement, which is about $1,600, and that's really the most expensive thing that typically goes wrong on these cars. There's fuel filter replacements, fuel injector replacements, and NOx sensor replacements. Those go from anywhere from $300 to $600 before any type of issues. And the power steering pump, because this doesn't have an electric steering like the newer cars do, so this would run you about $1,400. But other than that, this car will keep going and going, and you can get a really good one for a good price at about $3,000 to $5,000, and you can expect this one to go for miles and miles and miles on end. Just be aware that this does have certain electronics that will tend to go out as time goes on. The Bluetooth replacement is one of the more controversial things about this car, meaning that it was one of the things that leaches the battery and creates a problem. But otherwise, this car is a winner. Number two. Number two is the BMW 325 328 E90 E92. Now, when this originally debuted, this was seen as one of the more famous designs by Chris Bangle, and he made sure that he gave you a lot to talk about, and we see that's a common thing, obviously.
If I wanted to say that, I would have wrote it. You implied that. I said what I said. Okay, well, what you said was some bull.
Now, the BMW 325/328 had the infamous N52 inline 6, unlike the Acura TSX, which had a 4-cylinder, and this pumped out 230 horsepower, and this one was rear-wheel drive, so you were going to have much more fun driving this one. Average price goes anywhere between roughly about $4,500 to $5,100. I know I said $5,000, but I kind of lied. Anyway, this came with leather seats, it came with a Bluetooth system, it came with the gorgeous halo bi-xenon headlights with alloy wheels. BMW always gives you a lot of nice amenities and appointments for what you pay. So the quality on these particular generation was absolutely phenomenal. I've seen these BMWs go 200,000 and 300,000 miles easy as long as you take care of them. These were before or right at the time where BMW began turbocharging their engines, and it lasts so much longer than a lot of the turbocharged variants of this same generation. Common problems for this car also include oil leaks from the lower engine area. The rear window regulator tends to go out, as well as there's coolant loss due to the expansion. Outside of the fuel canister evaporator and the door mirror regulator, there's other few things that you should consider. One of them being the oil leaks from the lower engine area, the rear window regulator, and the coolant loss from the expansion tank are all something that you want to pay attention to, but otherwise from a mechanical standpoint, this is a solid choice. Number three. I'm a little too turned up. I'm not really turned up. I'm super chill, but I'm not really this turned up. Number 3 is the first generation Ford Edge. Hold up. No, we're not about to do that. Not about Ford. I know the joke is found on the road dead. Every dad joke is
Found on the road dead.
Ooh, where is Lady Miss when you need her?
Surprise! You've been duped, Janet.
The first generation Ford Edge came out with a 3.5 liter Duratec V6 engine, which pumped out 240 horsepower, and this could be mated to either a front wheel drive setup or all wheel drive setup. Now, the average cost for this car is anywhere between $26,000 and $4,000. Hopefully it has the bumper still hanging on to it, but this is an excellent choice if you're in the market for a cheap crossover. It's super fuel efficient, and this is before they went to the 2-liter EcoBoost engine, which in its earlier heydays was more problematic. In this particular instance, when Ford came out with this car, Alan Mullally had taken over Ford, and so he wanted to give more into the Ford lineup, and this is where we begin to see the reliability improvements on Ford, and we begin to see more of their vehicles go into the stratosphere of the same trajectory of the Japanese competitors up until recently. Ford has this thing where they go up and down, child. I don't know what that's about. The reason why I chose this car is because even though American cars have a perception of not being as reliable as their Japanese and German counterparts, which German counterparts are seen as super unreliable, but that's because we can't afford them, the Ford Edge in its first generation was so much better than the second generation, and the V6 engine was tried and true. It was in many applications prior to, and it was also in the Taurus, and the most expensive repair, according to repairpal.com, was the head gas replacement, which was only $2,500. And I know I say only $2,500, but when cars cost $45,000, $2,500 sounds pretty damn good to me. The other beauty about American cars is that while they may not be as quote unquote reliable, they also are more cheap to fix. And so this is not any different in this case for the Ford Edge. And you can expect to get pretty much 200,000 to 300,000 miles. You can go on cargurus.com, Auto Trader, and you'll see tons of Ford Edges with tons of miles on them. And this was before many of the computers were injected into these cars, so they're much more better. I would say stick to the SE trim because the SE trim is the most abundant, but it has the right amount of features you need. This includes a standard amount of features such as power sunroof, power seats. It comes with Microsoft Sync, and that was the first application of it. If you get a little higher in the SEL trim, and they're just so much more attainable and accessible to have in a tight budget, and they do exactly what you need to do as long as you take care of them. Common problems that tend to come out of this is the power booster, which is typically a service bulletin and is usually covered under 8 years for the brake booster. So that's something that a lot of the Ford people will take care of if it's properly within warranty or whatever. The transmission power shifter unit leaks around the axle area, so that's also something to look for, as well as the foam seal between the dash and the windshield tend to slide out. This is just a matter of engineering and design, not necessarily quality. And keep in mind that the first generation Ford is also almost 20 years old or running into, but I didn't want to give you something that was a Toyota or a Honda or something that was going to be problematic and you couldn't afford to take care of it. Number four. Let me get that 4 for 4. I ain't had Wendy's in a long time.
Wendy's for the first time. Stop staring, bitch.
Number 4 is the second generation Mazda 3. The Mazda 3 is a very interesting vehicle because for the longest, Ford had a lot of stake in Mazda, and a lot of the components shared from Ford were shared also in the Mazda, and that's not any different of this one. Now, for this particular year model and this generation, you could go with the first generation, but the second generation was the one that was probably the most transitory and had the most not so much liked styling, so the overall value of these went down significantly, but that doesn't mean that they're any less better than any of their competitors. You could get a Honda Civic, but you're going to pay for it. You could get a Toyota Corolla, but it may not be as fun to drive, and Mazda retains that factor tried and true for many years on end. And if you haven't seen that video on the Mazda CX-5, I got that one too. But the Mazda 3 is one of the few cars that you can get all of the standard features that you would get in a Honda Civic at the price of a Toyota Corolla. And that's what makes them super cool. This did come in 2 trims, which is the Mazda 3i and the Mazda 3S. The S came with the 2.5 liter engine that pumped out 167 horsepower, whereas the 2 liter only came with 148. The S trim is the one that you want, but the S trim may not be in the budget that you need. So take that with a grain of salt when you go look for these cars. Remember that the S trim is the higher trim, and with any type of higher trim, you are always going to pay a premium. These do come in automatic and manual transmissions. The I manual transmission will not be expensive as the S manual transmission, and if you go for the Mazda Speed 3, you are going to pay a pretty penny, so stay away from the Mazda Speed 3 if you are trying to stay within budget. For the second generation and the 2011 model year in particular, the annual repair cost was $454, and that is significantly cheap overall if you consider the fact that most of that is regular maintenance items such as oil changes, brakes, and tires maybe. 3 things that you can expect to go wrong with this particular car is the airbag warning light. The vibration can be felt from the front wheels at 55 miles.
Try it with me if you want to. It's not a good day. Okay? Now back to that
per hour, as well as there's a rattle from the rear suspension due to the loose stabilizer bar links. All of these are very cheap fixes if you just find out what the issue is, and in most cases you can go to an independent mechanic, a trusted independent mechanic, and they will be able to tell you what the problem is. I would recommend that if you do get any of these cars that you at least get them inspected prior to purchase. If you can't afford to get somebody to look at them from an inspection, have a trusted family member or friend and check their credentials, because y'all know sometimes we lie about what we know. Or you can come to this channel and you can get some idea of what you need to do. But be cautious about buying these cars, because these cars can be pricey to fix if you are not sure of what's going on. In most cases, these cars are relatively affordable to maintain and keep, but things go wrong and you want to be cautious, and you would rather not run into the fire in the building. Number 5. Where my ring at? Number 5, the first generation Ford Fusion. I know y'all thought I was gonna give y'all like a Toyota something. I'm not giving a Toyota nothing. I wanted you guys to have something completely devoid of Toyota and Lexus to give you a completely different perspective on what you should buy. Now, Honda, I cheated, but not this time. The first generation Ford Fusion is probably one of the more unseen cars that we would expect to be affordable yet maintainable. Stay with the first generation. The second generation has more problems as more electronics were injected. The first generation is under the same regime as the Ford Edge, and this is when we see an improvement in the reliability of the Ford Fusion. Overall annual repair cost for the Ford Fusion in particular for 2008 was $462 as annual repair cost. And again, this is just normal maintenance items. Some of the standard features that comes with this car is the Ford Sync, and Ford Sync really wasn't that standard. Now, this first generation Ford Fusion came with a few standard features with alloy rims, a nice quality styling, and a odometer. It was very much for the time. If you can give whatever comparables to a Toyota Camry at that time is what you would have gotten in the Ford Fusion. And it came in several trims. The one that you really want to stick around is the SE, which was the most popular, and the SEL gets a little more pricier and it has more electronics, so I would try to be cautious of that. This did come with two different engines, which was the inline 4 2.3 liter Duratec engine, which pumped out about 160 horsepower, as opposed to the 3.5 liter V6, which pumped out 221. You can also get the Lincoln Zephyr or the Lincoln MKZ. I would say stick to the Ford because it's less likely electronics will happen. And this came with standard features such as cloth seats. It came with power windows, power mirrors, the works. And this one was a really good car, and they can go very easily to 200,000 miles without a problem. This is made it to the front wheels, and there is an all-wheel drive option. I would stay away from the all-wheel drive option because it can be problematic down the road. As for problems you can expect, one of them is the delayed shifting of the automatic transmission. There's also squeaks and creaks over bumps and turning. But honestly, this car is over 15 years old. I expect a damn creak. And to be honest with you, if you got to complain about a creak or an eek, you probably should not be buying a $5,000 car. I'm just being honest. This is pretty much a bargain basement deal if you are in the market for a cheap car. With that being said, I didn't want to keep you guys very long. This is a very simple video. If you want me to go look into some other things, let me know. Otherwise, don't forget to smash that like button. That means a lot to me and the YouTube algorithm if you did. Thank you for your continued support, and continue to check in because I'm going to have some other stuff come down the road. And buy my damn book when it comes out. I'm not ready yet, but when it comes out. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Thanks again. See ya.